And let's be honest, how many times have you and I both heard the customer's always right? The customer's always right. The customer's always right. And if you buy that myth, because I'm going to call it a myth because I don't believe it anymore. I used to. I used to buy it hook, line, and sinker, but I do not believe it anymore. This is the Dog Sitter's House podcast. Hello, furry dog lovers. Welcome back to the Dog Sitter's House podcast. I am your host, April Hampton. I appreciate you being here, and I hope that you listened to last week's episode before listening to this episode, because this is going to be a series of 5 episodes, and they all run together. They all bounce off of one another, and today's episode is part 2 of that series. So, in case you did not hear part 1 and you really want to hear part 2 today instead of going back and listening to part 1 first, then let me review the underlying principle that I spoke about in part 1 at least, because this is the actual root cause of this first mistake that I'm going to go into today, as it is the root cause for basically all of the mistakes that I'll be discussing in this series. So it's very important that you get this root cause underlying principle, because it is the underlying cause of everything I'm speaking about when it comes to the mistakes that I'm pointing out and how to avoid them in this series. Okay, so the underlying principle that I discussed last week in part 1 is how struggling pet sitters often get caught in cycles of reasons, basically. They believe they don't have time, money, or the right circumstances to create a sustainable business. And what this does is it leads to burnout. It leads to unpredictable schedules, stressing about money every month, and that can affect your health and your relationships. They basically avoid the hard work, but necessary work, of setting boundaries and structuring their business for efficiency, and really embracing new methods, having an open mind and willingness to try new things, and instead of avoiding fear, actually going through it. Successful pet sitters prioritize growth over stagnation. Okay, they take ownership of their results, and they implement better systems, set boundaries, and they remain open to innovative business models instead of following traditional but oftentimes ineffective methods. By making intentional changes, they create a business that aligns with their lifestyle goals, financial needs, and personal well-being. Which basically leads me right to today's topic, which is the first major mistake most struggling pet sitters make. And that is allowing the pet sitter's curse to take the lead. So what do I call the pet sitter's curse? Well, I've talked about this before, but to review, in case you didn't hear it, it's what I call a pet sitter's natural caretaking tendencies becoming a work hazard to themselves. Basically, you put the dog or even the dog owner's needs above your own, because either you truly care about animals and your customers, which is honorable, or deep down, and often this is one that people don't even realize that they have deep down, is they believe they'll lose customers if they don't jump to their customers' every need and wish. So I see this a lot. And what I see is they do this even to the point of consistently allowing customers to drop off or pick up late because, you're worried your customer may be upset if you don't allow it, or worrying that a dog won't be able to get what they need if you don't discount or keep your prices low for some customers, because you just know, quote unquote, that they can't afford it if you raise your prices. And it can even pop up as emotional stress over a dog's well-being, right? Like you end up caring more about that dog than the dog owners do, or, taking better care of the dog than the dog owners do, or at least it feels like it, right? Just taking these things into consideration, they all stem from a lack of emotional boundaries, in the sense that you allow your emotions to be the sole decision maker in what you allow in your business. Emotional boundaries involve recognizing, understanding, and really protecting your emotions. They allow you to differentiate between yours and others' feelings so that you can be empathetic without feeling overwhelmed by their emotional experiences, or overwhelmed by the needs of a dog. Some examples of emotional boundaries can include being honest with yourself and others about your feelings without feeling guilty or ashamed, right? Isn't that the hard part? It's like, yeah, okay, I could be honest, but then I'm probably going to sit there and fret about it and let my mind, worry about it and feel guilty and just keep questioning whether I did the right thing and second guessing myself for the next day or two. And that doesn't do you any good, right? Another emotional boundary can include understanding that you're not responsible for managing someone else's emotions or fixing their problems, or in a pet sitter's case, fixing the dog for them, right? Or taking better care of their dog than they do, and caring more for their dog. Yeah, you can care more for them, but you can take better care of them. But no matter what you do, you cannot change the owner and how the owner cares for their dog. I mean, of course, if they're doing something completely neglectful or abusive, you might want to call the authorities. But if it's nothing that extreme, then you have to be careful and set healthy boundaries so that you're not taking on the responsibility of the dog above and beyond the owner. And another way that emotional boundaries can show up is by limiting contact with people who consistently disregard your feelings or really emotionally drain you. How many customers do you have, or have you ever had one in the past that just completely disregards your boundaries and the reasons for your boundaries, and maybe even emotionally drains you in the sense that they just come and vomit all of their problems on you, right? They're just, word vomiting all over you every time they come to pick up their dog or drop it off, right? You have to limit that sort of stuff because everything is energy. And when you allow someone's energy to come into your space and affect your emotions, it's contagious. It's going to seep out into the rest of your day, into the way that the dogs are around you, because they can feel your energy. And, if you have a team, it's going to affect them too. Another way is that you don't take time to eat, drink, sleep, or exercise. If you don't have good emotional boundaries, then chances are you're not taking the time to do these things. I'm guilty as charged. I did that. I consciously did that, and now I regret it. I regret consciously doing that, because getting back to better health is a lot harder, years after you've not been taking care of yourself. And another emotional boundary is asking for help or saying no to more work. How many times did I say yes when I really meant no? I cannot even begin to tell you. And there is a whole host of reasons. This is a whole nother episode or two or three of all of the reasons as to why we might say yes when we really mean no. And, we might not even ask for help. And this will just wear you out, burn you out, and get you to the point where it's just not sustainable emotionally anymore. Okay, so another way I would say that's pretty uh, relatable for the pet sitting business is consistently working long hours and disregarding personal time. Obviously, this leads to burnout and ultimately reduced productivity, reduced sharpness, and it could open up the door to having mistakes made and possibly dogs getting hurt or harmed in the or lost, like let out of a gate because you're so tired you didn't realize you didn't shut it or something, right? And I think that's all of our nightmare, right? Like all of us, our worst nightmare would be losing somebody's dog, or being a dog being harmed under our supervision. So we definitely don't want that. So this is why emotional boundaries are so important if you want to be able to sustain your business. Let me say that again. If you want to be able to sustain your business, the emotional sustainability is a huge factor in this. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention how interpersonal boundaries play a role in this as well. This can refer to the limits, the rules, and the guidelines that we set to define emotional, physical, and mental space, right? So this kind of includes emotional, physical, and mental, but it does play a role in the emotional as well. So I thought it would be good to bring that up. These limits determine how we interact with others, how much we're willing to give or receive, and what behaviors we find acceptable or not acceptable. Interpersonal boundaries can be both explicit and implicit, and they play a crucial role in maintaining healthy and respectful relationships, whether really in a personal or a professional setting, right? So I know you might be thinking, you could be thinking that you may currently have this belief that some people have. I mean, I don't know, just like a few dog sitters may have this belief, just a couple, right? Just probably not you. But you might have the belief that prioritizing the dog or the dog owner's needs is the key to retaining your customers. And I totally get it. Okay, I get it. I get it. I used to think this way too. And, I think this is why you think that is many business owners feel that by putting their customers' needs first, they can build loyalty and trust, which I agree. It's very important in any service industry. And let's be honest, how many times have you and I both heard the customer's always right? The customer's always right. The customer's always right. And if you buy that myth, because I'm going to call it a myth because I don't believe it anymore. I used to. I used to buy it hook, line, and sinker, but I do not believe it anymore. And the reason being is if you buy that belief, then you're always going to be putting the customer's needs ahead of your own needs. So, no, the customers aren't always first. The customers aren't always right. Okay. What is crucial is to prioritize your own needs and well being as a business owner, as a business can only thrive when its leader is not overburdened, overstressed, and your cup is full, as the saying goes. You see, it's really not a matter of keeping customers by pleasing their every single need or jumping at their every little whim. It's a matter of wowing them so much within your boundaries that they'll do anything to stay in your good graces just to continue being your client. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've had customers that I've had to, give a little reminder of my policies to or my hours to. And the first thing that comes out of their mouth is like, "Oh gosh, don't don't fire me as a customer. I want to make sure my dog can continue coming here, and I wasn't even close to doing that. But it's nice to hear that they value the service that much, because that means I'm doing something right. That means that we are wowing them to the point and providing a service to them that they feel like they can't get anywhere else. And quite possibly they can't. And this way, they're going to want to stay within your boundaries to do anything to continue being a client. So, how do you do this consistently if you're always draining your energy? If you're always allowing your emotional boundaries to be pushed? Let's think about it like this. Have you ever worked for a company that continuously piled more responsibilities on your plate until you were so stressed out that you found another job? I've done that. I have totally done that. It was like they fired one girl. Um, they lost another girl to whatever, she decided to leave. And instead of hiring people to fill those roles, they just said, "Here, April, you're doing such a great job. Why don't you do this too?" Right? Meanwhile, they were passing me up for even considering me for a promotion. And I was like, "Oh, I see. I'm way too good at what I do now. So you don't want to lose me in this position." Right? Have you ever done that? And then you just found another job because, you know, at some point you hit a breaking point, right? This can also happen with your own company. If you keep piling more responsibilities onto your plate, wearing more hats, performing more roles within your business, eventually you could get so stressed out and exhausted that you're just going to decide this business isn't right for you. You're going to blame it on, "Oh, this isn't working and this is too much and like this is and not humanly possible," and you're just gonna say, "This just wasn't right for me," and you'll just close up shop and go find a job. And I'm guessing that you didn't get into the pet care industry because you wanted to burn yourself out so much that you closed your business, right? Think about it. Saying you have to prioritize your customers' needs to retain their business is like saying you won't eat at your favorite restaurant anymore because they won't let you dine there after hours. Right? No. Just like you wouldn't stop using a dog groomer just because they're fully booked when you called at the last minute, your customers won't stop coming to you either. Instead, just as you'd recognize your mistake and plan ahead next time, your clients are going to do the same. The first few times you have to tell them no because you're fully booked or it's outside of your business hours, they're going to learn to book earlier and schedule their travel around your availability. This gives you more control over your schedule and the freedom to take the time off that you need. And isn't it more important you focus on how to communicate your hours and policies in a way that doesn't upset a customer, but actually causes them to respect you and your boundaries even more? When I was able to set my policies and hours to a more manageable structure, I was able to shift my focus on ensuring my customers were given consistent and quality care. I was able to focus on attracting and retaining customers who care for my own well being as much as I care for their dog's well being. And to my surprise, not only did my customers completely understand, gratefully, when I shortened my daily hours and decreased my number of daycare days, they actually nearly applauded me for doing so, for doing what I needed to do for me again. Little did I know that many of them were getting concerned about my well being because they saw how much and how hard I worked. I knew my exhaustion was hard to hide some days, but until then, I didn't realize how much my customers could see it too. Looking back, I can only imagine how some of them may have been concerned about my ability to be fully present and sharp enough to care for their fur babies day in and day out. Because let me tell you, some days I looked pretty rough. And if it wasn't for a good team, I wouldn't have made it through, honestly. The irony was my customers cared more about me than I did about myself, which was a huge awakening for me because it was then that I realized that even in business, it's important to take care of yourself first. Not only because you need your health to have a sustainable business, but because your customers are taking note of it and continuously considering your capability of caring for their pets. So you get to choose. Do you neglect your own needs and risk burnout and possibly your business? Or are you willing to find that balance that allows you to thrive both personally and professionally? Whether you give reasons or results, it's totally and completely up to you and you only. And I think that's about all I have to say on the subject. So, thanks for listening. I hope this helped you. I hoped it helped to put some things in perspective and help you overcome the pet sitter's curse, if you shall have that in the first place. So, until next time, happy tales to you.